They went 4 beds. Oh, yeah. The second person has moved in and it's just, he's happiest he's ever been in his entire life. Everybody deserves a home program. Joel Parker.
Yeah, Joel. Frankie sings the blues.
David, right?
Bill.
Bill, yeah, sorry.
Nice to see you again.
Long time no see, it's like, been
Just
like again.
Before COVID, I think. Well,
Yeah.
it's been that long.
Yeah, probably even been some
You
of
were
those.
away
Oh,
for a
okay,
while,
yeah.
right?
But
Yeah.
they've like, just awkward.
We were here, but I've been working at home because they needed COVID, they needed a bunch of software institute foundations and that. I've been doing contracts with them home ever since.
Very good.
Let me get you
More time in the
copies.
garden.
Yeah.
Nice, just good.
Yeah, and then we're also.
I'm gonna give you this,
Okay.
One viewer.
and we're
Yeah, it's a grant proposal.
Yeah.
And the reason.
6.5.
Okay.
There is an extra motion, did you get my email?
Yes.
Okay.
I did, thank you. Appreciate that.
No worries.
It's good to see you. Yeah, so we're struggling with our water issue. It keeps getting worse every year.
We'll get there.
Normally they wouldn't know.
Support here.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Just because if they ask my.
Yeah, last year was the worst. It was hauling 5-gallon barrels for
Yeah.
the
It's
acid.
just, it's a table to bring in all these
It started
different
about
agencies,
10
so
years
it's not
ago,
really a
but
political thing.
the last 4 years, 50 years.
Yeah, we've been asked those.
The anxiety with it is quite something.
Financially.
I
so
go,
we-
my first 20 years, we didn't have running water when we were growing up.
Yeah,
Years or something.
sure, yeah.
Just where my grandparents lived and stuff.
You get to haul
We
one.
you're always hauling water, you're always getting water. It's like,
Oh, yeah.
so it's a constant thing. Up north too, outside of the city in Dawson Creek, nobody has running water obviously, and everybody's got a truck with a 2,000 gallon thing on it in winter and summer, and you just haul it.
Yeah.
You know, you come into town to do anything, oh, I gotta get water, I
I
gotta
heard
get
a
water.
guy in
And now they're
CBC
asking
who
other
was one of
questions
the
about, like,
counselors or engineer
healthcare
up there,
advocacy
and
and
they
stuff.
talked about their lack of
If you put me,
firefighting.
I could answer that if you.
Water.
Yeah.
You know, had development pressure, but then you
We'll
see
get that for you,
all
for sure.
the water and for fires, you know, if they were
Yeah,
like it
yeah,
was
I'll talk.
in Kelowna, they said we couldn't do it.
It's good to put a data logger on it, just to,
Yeah, no, that's fine. I think
just so we can learn more about it.
Yeah.
Share with
Michael sent out this question this time and there's like,
You can read to that.
we had 4.
the aquifer is in great shape, so there's lots of water.
It's usually
It's big because it's, working, I've always had a very big vegetable garden, but being more involved, I've been doing more of it. And the last couple of years I've just abandoned it to meet the water.
No, like one specifically on Mills Road in Seashell. Mm-hmm, no. Len will have plenty to say.
Speak about youth transit. There's a question.
So I am calling to order the regular meeting of Town of Gibsons Council for March the 5th, 2024 at 7 p.m. And I'd like to acknowledge that we're gathering on the traditional territories of the Skokomish Nation. First, I don't think we have any adjustments to the agenda this evening, so we need a motion to approve the agenda, moved by Councillor Kroll, seconded by Councillor DeAndretti. All those in favor? The motion carries. Just out of curiosity, is Councillor Lemley on the line joining us? No. Okay. He's at home recovering from a medical procedure. So we've got minutes, February 23rd, 2024 to adopt. Is there a moved by Counselor Kroll, seconded by Counselor DeAndretti. All those in favor? Thank you. And we have a bylaw for first, second, and third reading. This is a routine rates, fees, and charges amendment bylaw. It's bylaw number 1196-23, 2024, and we just need to move that first, second, third reading. Moved by Counselor Kroll, seconded by Counselor Thompson. Any discussion? All those in favor? The motion carries. And I don't think there's anything more on that one. Committee report.
I have a question.
On the bylaw? Yeah. Go ahead, please.
Perhaps, hopefully, the CEO can respond.
I think Lorraine is online. Yeah.
Oh, it's not a financial question. It's more the interpretation of the water rates fee. I understand for residents, it's each cubic meter, but I think I didn't get when commercial rates is 1 inch meter. I'm trying to,
Through you, Ms. Mayor, we've got different size meters for commercial properties. So some of the large ones have a larger meter, like a 4-inch meter or 2-inch meter, but a 1-inch meter it's like a household meter is the smallest ones that we have. For commercial ones, they require a larger meter size, and the fee is it's different. It's calculated differently for a commercial property than it would be on a residential property.
Mayor, I understand the calculation, but I think I don't understand what it means 1 inch meter. Because 1 cubic meter, I understand, but 1 inch,
It's the size of the water pipe.
sorry?
Answer this.
Domestic water lines, I think, are what, 1/2 inch? And when you get into larger volume water users, they have a larger size pipe coming in, and it requires a larger meter for that water to be measured. So it's based on the pipe size.
Okay, thank you. And I have another question. Thank you. I imagined that was the case, but I don't like assuming. I see here that there's a meter commercial users. So what are the types of commercial users that can have unmetered water?
It's a good trivia question.
Yeah, I'm a little stumped. I wanted to say these would be sort of sales of water out of a hydrant, for example, where we would place, it's not a full-time meter, but I'd have to get some more information on that and get back to you on that. Yeah, well, yes, but we're not our own customer, I guess. Unmetered commercial.
We'll have to look that one up.
Yeah, I'm not really sure, to be honest.
Okay, moving on to Committee of the Whole minutes, February 23rd, 2024. These are just here for information. Are there any questions? Seeing none. From those minutes, we have the permissive tax exemption policy recommendation that committee came up with, and that is that an additional question be added to the permissive tax exemption application form, asking applicants to provide details of current or future intended use of vacant and or underutilized land, and that a PTE declaration from a financial recovery be included as part of that application. Moved by Councillor DeAndretti, seconded by Councillor Thompson. All those in favor? The motion carries. And we had another recommendation coming from committee on preliminary general operations budget, which has already been, Lorraine is so on top of it, she's already done this work before we've even passed the motion, but earlier today. But we should pass it anyway. that staff explore reducing the tax increase to 3% through initiatives such as increasing revenues, considering service or information sharing with other local governments, and reducing professional services, for example, legal services in the operating budget. Moved by Councillor Kroll, seconded by Councillor Thompson. All those in favor? The motion carries. And now on to administration reports. We've got a report from the Director of Infrastructure Services on an active transportation grant and options for remaining funds. So yeah, this is an interesting report covering a few hotspots that were identified in our budget dialogue, fortunately. So that's good timing.
Yes,
I'll look to our director.
Thank you, Mayor White. I can provide a little bit of an update on some of the cost estimates for the work that was included, some of the optional items. But just in general, we're looking to use up the remaining funds for the active transportation grant that the town received a few years ago. Work has been completed on Marine Drive, on the bus stop and bump outs at the crosswalk at Armors Beach, and on Venture Way for the multi-use path, and as well as the multi-use path on Payne Road. There's a remaining section of the multi-use path on Venture Way fronting 1026 and 1038, which wasn't completed due to the fact that there's an active development proposed for 1026 Venture Way. But at the time, at this time, we're just looking to complete the rest of the grant funding. We received pricing from a contractor to complete the full extent of the remaining portion of the multi-use path on Venture Way. And the amount to complete that would be $130,000. That exceeds the remaining grant funds by about $15,000. So as an alternative option, we've had the contractor provide pricing to just complete the frontage works in front of the properties. I'm going to see if I can get rid of that feedback. Sorry about that. If we can complete the active transportation upgrades in front of just the property that's not under current development, I had estimated $75,000 in the report, and the pricing that we got back from the contractor is actually $88,000. So there is a bit of an adjustment to the available funds remaining between the contractor fees and the engineering services to complete the multi-use path on Venture Way. There's a remainder of about $16,000, which we could allocate with the options that are outlined under option 1 at page 4 of the report. Sorry, the page number of the agenda in front of me. There are some considerations with the option to not complete the multi-use path in front of 1026. While certainly it would be a frontage requirement, a frontage improvement that would be required of the development, and there's staff see a benefit to having the developer complete those works. It's always possible that that development would not proceed, and the town would be left in a situation where that multi-use path is not complete, and would not be able to would have to find the funds to complete that somewhere else, which might prove challenging given the amount of money that we're looking at. So there's an opportunity to complete it now with the grant, but it's also it would be works that would be required as part of the development. So hence the reason that we're looking for a little bit of direction from council on whether we think that these grant funds should be used to complete the frontage works in front of this development, or if we'd rather reallocate it to some other locations, including some of the crosswalks that were identified at that information session for the budget discussion. And I'll leave it there. I'm just struggling with some audio. I don't know if that's just on my end or if it's in the room as well. So if I seem a bit distracted, I'm getting some feedback. It's throwing me off a little bit. So I'll leave it there for now.
Sounds okay here.
Okay.
Questions, Councillor Kroll?
Thank you. I certainly appreciate the completion of the path on Venture Way. I've noticed a couple of things happen. Because of the areas where there isn't the path, cyclists use that beautiful new piece of pavement that exists down the middle of the road where the water main was replaced, because it's lovely and smooth and straight. So you have cyclists come off the path onto the road, which is definitely dangerous. And, you know, even people with strollers and things, because of the number of residents in that area, you know, they're venturing out into the road, which is potentially hazardous. So, you know, purely from a point of safety, it would be good to see that completed. And I know this isn't anything to do with the current director of infrastructure, but I would like to see any future developments where these access paths are put in, that the path be at a common grade throughout the length of the path and not go up and down at every driveway. For people with mobility issues, it's incredibly difficult to be bouncing up and down in a wheelchair. Parents with strollers, again, it's this bouncing up and down every driveway they get to. And in a lot of other communities, the access paths are level, and it also controls traffic a little bit. It makes people slow down a bit before they pull in off the side roads into the main road or out of parking lots into the main road. So I would certainly support option one, and also include in that what we can do on Abbs Road to put in some traffic control there, because there's a lot of children cross Abbs Road for access to the school grounds with the trails that are there. So I would support Venture Way and Abbs Road.
Councillor Thompson?
I agree, Councillor Kroll, good points. And I want to bring up the bike racks. It was really great to see that included. I think that's something that we hear about a lot, definitely in our community. And I'd be interested to hear how many, because I can think of probably a good half dozen spots right now.
Through the mayor. The number depends on what else we want to commit to. So the available funding, when I prepared this report, I was maybe a little bit optimistic with the pricing for just the reduced scope. Given the efficiencies of doing a larger scope of work, there's a little bit more to do the frontage just in front of 1038. So what I've just kind of roughed out here, I think we'd have, depending on what the direction is, if we do the crosswalks and the work Venture Way, we would have about $2,000 left for some bike racks. And depending on the model the style we get, we'd probably be somewhere in the range of maybe two to 4 or 5, depending on how much they are. And I certainly could think of a few as well, and that's something for us to consider for the future as well, as maybe just a program of a few bike racks a year wouldn't be much of a hit budget wise, and it might start to fill in some of those key areas where you see bikes start to pile up in the summer.
Thank you. With regard to 1026 Venture Way, if the development doesn't come forward and we have to do the work, is it recoverable in the near future, the expenses?
Through the mayor, I can understand. I think, are you asking if we were to do the work up front, we would explore ways to try to recover those funds if the development were to happen? If the development doesn't happen, then any improvement on fronting that would have to come from the town funds. So if we were to complete the frontage works in front of 1026 with this grant funding, there may be opportunities for the town to recover the funds from the development. There's nothing obvious, and we would need to seek a legal opinion on what sort of mechanisms there might be that would allow the town to recover the funds from the developer. And there's no guarantee that that would be possible. That's certainly something that we would explore. But if the development doesn't happen, then the town would just have to find the funds from elsewhere to complete those upgrades.
Motion? Councillor Andretti? Okay. Moving option one, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Any discussion? All those in favor? That motion carries. Thank you, Director. And any other questions on this item? Okay, the next item is 6.2, which is a report from our CAO and Natural Assets Technician and Manager of Human Resources on Indigenous Engagement Requirements Funding Program. And we've got a written report. I don't know if anyone wants to speak to it.
Through Mr. Mayor, Michelle has offered to.
Thank you, CAO. So through you, Mr. Mayor, in November of 2023, the province updated their Emergency Management Act, and it's now the Emergency and Disaster Management Act. And through that act, they are putting in place regulations or legislation for local governments to do risk assessments and look at ways to continue operations when emergencies happen. And because of that, they are also wanting local governments, or are going to be mandating local governments to engage with First Nations governments for this emergency planning and disaster risk management. And so they have provided this funding program called the Indigenous Engagement Requirement Funding Program, and it's been allocated to all local governments and First Nations across BC. And so this report is bringing forward to you what staff are recommending that we use those funds for. So the recommendations is that staff be authorized to sign the contribution agreement and that council endorse the proposed work plan activities.
Any questions? Councillor DeAndretti.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, on the report, it's very self-explanatory, but with regards to reconciliation and capacity building, my question is, there will be activities and reconciliation effort, they say activities such as meetings and building understanding. So my question, is there any report that's going to be compiled? Because I don't know if we're going to get funding every year to do that. So if there's some policy document or some document that will result from this as a kind of orientation package. And also if council is part of that, or this is just for staff.
So there's a couple different parts to this. One is that because this is to implement the requirements under the Emergency Disaster Management Act, that we need to do Indigenous engagement that involves emergency planning. So it's very specific to that. But as an other proposed activity that's not listed, we can also do staff training or council and staff training on cultural competency, et cetera. So the work plan as proposed now is for staff to look at options for, it could be like a tiered approach as far as like staff that regularly engage with the nation would have a certain level of training, cultural training. This is beyond the emergency management training as well. And then explore options for council and elected officials.
Okay, other questions? Is there a motion to support the contribution agreement? Moved by Councillor Kroll, seconded by Councillor Thompson. All those in favor? The motion carries. And we have another report from our natural asset technician, which is it's a grant application. This time, this is an application for money rather than getting it. But yeah, someone's bringing in the money here. It's like three reports in a row. Do you want to speak to this one too?
Sure. because I volunteered, right, for this one as well. So we have been working on a predictive model for community resilience for the last year or so, myself and the CAO and a complex systems modeler named Matt Bass. And previously we have funded this through LGCAP, the Local Government Climate Action Planning grant and or funding program. And we are now proposing to apply for a $300,000 grant through the Disaster Risk Reduction Climate Adaptation Funding Program. And the fund itself has three categories or three streams of funding. Category 1 is for foundational activities. Category 2 is for things like risk assessments, and Category 3 we don't need to get into because we're not applying for that. And so what we're proposing is that Category 1, the foundational activities, would be for development of the model itself. So building the model, and this model, when I said complex systems, what it's doing is looking at all the data that you would have as a community and building up this 3D model that would show your infrastructure, your buildings, your creeks, your foreshore, your every single component of your community, and then you would develop scenarios about, you know, what would happen if you were to log this entire watershed or whatever. And so you'd run that through the model, and it would show you the effects on all the different components of your system. And so that would be the second, that would be the Category 2 part, is doing risk assessments based on the information that you have in the model once the model is built. And also doing policy assessments, so looking at if you were to make decisions through policy plans, then what would the impacts be potentially on these components of the system. So the model is totally unique because all the models that exist right now can model, I feel like I'm saying that word a lot, but they can do, say, a risk assessment, or they can look at one type of climate stressor, but they can't couple that with something else happening at the same time, and they can't look at all of the components of the system and the impacts to all of these different things. I should go back a step too and say that because of this new Emergency Disaster Management Act, as of, I believe it's going to be 2026, we're not sure yet, local governments are going to be required to do risk assessments for everything, like all of, you know, their infrastructure, and then it hasn't been laid out yet what type of risks they're talking about, or what type of risks we're going to have to assess. So our proposal is that this predictive model will be able to do all of those risk assessments and output like direction for council and for staff to prioritize projects, to prioritize like decision making and policy. So yeah, that's, and now the CAO will add to that.
CAO, do you have anything to offer?
Cherry on top. No. Just a couple more things. Thank you, Michelle, for that. As Michelle, there are no models available, and so hence why we're sort of applying. The first part of the grant is to actually build a model. And the second part is to run the model, I guess, which is where most communities are at. We just, through our own engagements, just realizing that as much as we're going to be required, the province hasn't provided a tool for us to do that. Council received today some information about just one of our models, the sanitary sewer system model. When we run that model, we can ask them different things: more people, less water, more water. But just next to it, we've got the aquifer model, and that model, these models don't talk to each other. And we've got the urban forestry plan and the OCP and so on. When you start to add all this data, we don't know how it all fits together, and we can't really ask, you know, questions like, what is the impact of covering every roof with solar or doubling the amount of trees that we have? We want to actually be able to provide council with the evidence of the possible impacts of the policies you're considering. That's what the model is for. It's a little bit out there, but it is the future, because we can't compute these complex interactions. Fortunately, we already have the framework, which is we started, you might recall, just after the pandemic started. We realized that our lives were about to get a lot more complex, and that you're dealing with power, climate change, housing, mental health, and all these issues, and sort of how do we manage. So the resilience framework sort of lays out all the areas that we anticipate are either related to emissions reductions or, in this case, risk reduction. And for us to make decisions in the future, we want to bring you evidence that can support one way or another. So that's what this is for.
Any questions? Councillor DeAndretti.
Thank you. Is it, I believe this is the first in Canada, but is there any other country that has done some similar work? And the reason I ask, because models are great, but depends on the data you input. And when you do several models at once, then there are many variables and it can impact, and then the results can be, depending on the scale. So I'm just curious if, and maybe you haven't decided this yet, but if it's just the results is not necessarily an absolute scenario, but best scenario, worst scenario, if, let's say, if fire happens, what kind of impacts could be. I just get nervous sometimes with complex models, right? Because they can skew certain things and put some pressure, but as long as we have this in mind.
I'll say a couple of things, and I think Michelle can probably comment well beyond that. Models is not an exact science per se, and it is, a lot of it is related to the quality of your data. In our case, we have some confidence in the fact that a lot of the data that we're going to be computing is data that we have some control and that we're in the possession of. So it's not sort of like, just say, take climate data, for example. In the past, we would have relied on a Canadian average for rain or so on. Now, with this one, we have the exact data because we've got an expanded network. So we're not, so that when you look at each data point, we're aiming for as much certainty as possible, knowing that it is not exact, but it's and you can take that model as in sort of the tool itself and take it to Whistler, and they would use their own data and get much more localized data. I don't know if that sort of represents it somehow.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So that's a great question, because that has come up in our discussions for the development of this model in the first place. Is we know that all models are flawed, and this one, from my experience, is different in the fact that what we're doing is we set out to create a non-biased model. So we're not putting data in looking for an answer, right? That would, we want the model to tell us what we want to hear. So what we're wanting to do is, it's like strategic thinking, future scenarios, and you would put in your information having no idea what you're going to learn from it. And it may completely change what you thought you were going to understand. So, and the whole thing about modeling is developing the questions that you're wanting to answer. And so we talk a lot about what's our intention for running the model, what's our intention for putting this data into the model. And so the biggest thing for me is that what we're actually looking for is not an outcome or an output. We're looking for errors within the model. So if you don't know what you're going to learn by running all these things simultaneously. And so what you're looking for is deviations from status quo, I would say. So that's why I think that this model is, the way that it's being designed is not, it's unbiased. A lot of models are very biased. So Yeah, but I really appreciate that question because that's something that we really considered when even looking to undertake this.
I saw Councillor Thompson first, and then Councillor.
Thanks for that explanation, because I was curious as to the basis of scientific standard versus fact-driven information that you're putting into the predictability model. So thanks for explaining that. This is exceedingly exciting. It's fabulous to see that we have this opportunity for this grant. What was my question? What's the timeline on this as far as Category 1 being the direct effect of Category 2?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So when you apply for Category 1 and 2 simultaneously, you have to show that you will complete all of the activities of Category 1 before you can actually start Category 2. So you can receive the funding for both, but they have to be, one has to precede the other. So as far as our timing, you have to wrap it up within a year, I believe, for the Category 1. So we would be looking at, we'll probably find out in 120 days if we're successful with the application. So we'd be looking for 2025, like mid-2025, to actually have the working model developed to the point that we can run it and start running for risk assessments. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very exciting. I'm glad that we found a place to apply for funding for it too. Because, yeah, I know it's been something our staff has worked on for quite a while. Do you want to move it, Councillor DeAndretti? Yeah, it's moved by Councillor DeAndretti, seconded by Councillor Kroll. Any more discussion? All those in favor? Oh, is that discussion? Yeah, Councillor Kroll. Oh, yeah, sorry, you had your hand up earlier.
No, I second it and I support it by all means, and thank you for bringing this to us. And, just going back to Councillor D'Andretti's concern, I'm assuming the different layers that you're asking the system to determine risk assessment on, you can add and remove them. So it's, the concern that I think that you were trying to pull something out of a bowl of alphabet soup, you really have a bit of control with the layering and what you can do within a layer. So I totally support it, but I just wanted the clarification on the layering component.
Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the interesting thing with building the model itself is that once the modeler has figured out how to do one layer, like how to input one layer in, then everything else becomes way easier. So it's the initial step of like how to, his biggest breakthrough recently was creeks, like how to represent creeks. And I got to see it today. I got to see the 3D creeks, and you can change. Right now he just did arbitrary, it's this creek, Charman Creek, is 1 meter wide and 30 centimeters deep, but you can change it at any location, like any point along, you can change the width and the depth. And so all it takes is getting those things initially put in, and then the adjustments are, I say that, but the other thing I should note too is that this isn't just run off your laptop, right? This is a computer that would be a standalone computer that's the only software that is running on that computer because it takes up so much space, but it's just one of those things you just put it on that computer and then you just let it run. You just let it run the scenarios and come back to it the next day or a few hours later or whatever, and you'll see the outputs from it.
Fun.
You can't help with relationship questions.
Okay, all those in favor? The motion carries. Thank you. And we've got another grant application here for the Green Municipal Fund. Do you want to introduce that one too?
Sure.
Yeah.
So this is
you've offered.
This is through FCM, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, for the Green Municipal Fund. So this is following on the heels of our corporate climate action plan that is underway right now with, in partnership with the Community Energy Association. And so this project, if successful, would begin later in 2024. And it's for a community, what we would have called a community energy and emissions plan, but we're calling it the Low Carbon Resilience Climate Action Plan for the town of Gibsons. So this is looking first at the corporate and then now at the community's emissions. And then it'll help with policy decisions and will effectively have recommendations as far as what we as a community can do and how our organization can help the community achieve these objectives. Oh, and I will mention that the grant from FCM is for 50% of funding, so we would have to put forward $49,000, which would be, it's eligible for being funded under the LG CAP funds, which will come to council for the capital budget discussion.
Okay. Is this for the Green Municipal Fund, is there a line of funding for climate action plans? Like it's the specific program of funding there? Yeah.
This is still the last of the old green municipal funds. They won't be funding this type of program anymore. So we were trying to fit in just sort of at the last minute. But yes, so the new one won't have this possibility, but this is an option that's still available. And I also wanted to say that this work on this particular community energy plan, it would fit nicely into the official community plan because the data that we have in our current plan is still from 2007 or something like that. And so it saves a lot of work on that portion as well.
Okay, so motion moved by Councillor Kroll, seconded by Councillor Thompson to apply to submit an application for the Green Municipal Fund for the development of a low carbon resilience climate action plan, and that we provide overall grant management. Any discussion? Yes. Yeah, Councillor DeAndretti.
Thank you. I have some questions. There's a line here that says to include strong community engagement. And I know there's a mention on Squamish Nation, but is it also with our residents?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, and there's a couple different options for doing these low carbon resilience community climate action plans, where you can do, they're like it would just be like this framework that's built and it's just like a quick start kind of thing. You just like dump your data in. But staff recommended that we take it a step further and do actual community engagement, because I know it's a council strategic priority. And so this plan is kind of a build out of that base plan that you as a community could be doing.
Any other discussion? Councillor DeAndretti.
Thank you. Well, this is very good to hear because I'm concerned with plans that are top-down, downloaded, and obviously talking about modeling climate change and with the prescription of the province to electrify everything. I'm concerned with that because when we don't have diversity of power, we lose resilience. And a good example was what happened on Sunday, that suddenly so many people didn't have electricity, they couldn't cook, and they didn't have power to heat themselves. So I really appreciate, Mayor, that we are going to ask the community because obviously there's a lot of good stuff in climate action, but there's stuff that I get nervous about, just okay. I just learned, there was actually an article in the newspaper, BC Hydro has only 19% of available electricity for the plants that the province puts. So 81% will come at our costs. So there's a lot of things that it's just beautiful on the plan, But when it comes to, and given our situation, inflation and all the costs that we already having, so I just want to be thoughtful, and I hope we have a good time to evaluate the plan once the plan is ready, and I'm sure it's coming to council for approval. So thanks for involving the community. I think this is really important.
More discussion? All those in favor of the motion? Motion carries. And now, for a break in grant applications, there's another one still coming, but well, supporting the SCRDs. But we've got the planning department presenting on an amendment to allow drilling of a well for domestic water supply at 711 Courtney Road.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got a short introduction, and Michelle's volunteered to stay in case you have any questions. So the town's received a zoning amendment to request permission to drill a well for domestic water supply. Essentially, the property is isolated from Gibsons town proper by Gibsons Creek. So there are no services to the property from the town. There's no water, sanitary, or storm. The property has an existing private shallow well, which has become increasingly inconsistent over the past couple of years, and it now runs dry between the months of May to November. The property owners have installed some water tanks on the property. They have a total capacity of around 9,000 gallons, and they've relied on water trucks to refill these tanks during prolonged periods of dry weather. Unfortunately, the company that they have relied on for providing these services have stopped providing residential bulk water delivery, and there doesn't seem to be another business on the coast that would provide this service. So the property owners are looking to find a solution to their water needs as soon as possible. So the closest SCRD water main is approximately 240 meters from the property. It's cost prohibitive to connect to. The zoning bylaw prohibits the drilling of any domestic water well, and so a zoning amendment is required to allow for the property owner to actually drill a well on their own property. The town did have a similar request in 2013 for Lot 31 Chester Road, and that was supported at the time, and that's why we've got a section in the zoning bylaw that allows for one specific property to drill a well. The application for 711 Courtney Road has been reviewed by Infrastructure Services staff, and in consultation with Waterline, it was noted that this would be a great opportunity to be able to monitor the Soames lobe of Aquifer 560. This is where Michelle comes in. And there would be no additional risk of contamination to install a data logger into the well. The town would need to enter the property annually, and to retrieve that data, we wouldn't be pulling anything up. It would be a data logger in the well, and they would have a cable connected to it. So that's how they would download the data. And staff suggest that we should secure some access to the well before we adopt this bylaw, if it's supported. Now, a draft of the bylaw 106577 is, I think it's attachment A of the staff report, and it's there for your consideration. The proposal aligns with the OCP, so no public hearing is necessary, but planning staff would have to mail property owners within 100 meters of the subject property to let them know about, give them notice of first reading. If the bylaw is adopted, the property owner would still be required to apply for development permits for development permit area number 2, which is for environmentally sensitive areas, development permit number 9, which is for Gibsons Aquifer, as well as a drilling permit, and that's to make sure that the drilling is done to the methodology approved by the town. If you have any questions, Michelle and I are here, and Bill, the property owner, is here as well.
Questions? Councillor D'Andrade?
Thank you. Well, I think it's a great opportunity to monitor the aquifer in a strategic location and also to provide reliable water to a resident. My question is, I understand because the bylaws say the installation of a data logger in the well for the purpose, but it's may, right? Will be there any covenant or something to guarantee that moving forward? Because my understanding from this report is that the town would have all the information to monitor, right, and interfere in case or limit whatever is the reason. So how do you go about it? Because the bylaw it says may, but with this particular, is it a covenant that in place or?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, are you saying a covenant to ensure that there's a data logger in the well, or to secure access?
No, to secure long-term, right? A property can be sold in 5 years. I mean, the way when I read this report we monitored our wells, right? To ensure capacity and all the other important quality, water quality. So I'm just understanding because this is a private property, right? So how the town will go about it, and that's why my question, is it a covenant?
Yeah, so we, through you, Mr. Mayor, the town would likely ask for a right-of-way.
You? No? Okay. Okay, thank you. Yeah, go, sorry. I just thought it might be a bigger emergency than that.
No, okay. So we would likely have a right-of-way on the property to allow access, but Trevor may be able to provide a little bit more information about requiring that data logger. Here we go.
Thank you, through the mayor. I think we would be looking at the options, but I think probably a covenant would be the simplest way to ensure that the data logger would remain as long as the town deems it to be relevant and important for the aquifer monitoring. Certainly that would be explored through the drilling permit process with the applicants.
Sounds good. Other questions? Okay, moving option 1. That Councillor DeAndretti is moving option 1 to notify neighbors of first reading, then proceed with 3 readings. Seconded by Councillor Kroll. And we have an additional motion here too. I'm not going to forget that, but it's about the monitoring we're talking about. Any discussion on option 1? All those in favor? The motion carries. And staff is also, related to what we're hearing this evening, recommending that we say further that prior to the adoption of bylaw 1065-77, the town secures access to the monitoring well at 711 Courtney Road. That's the wording, yeah. Councillor Kroll, moving that. Seconded, Councillor Thompson. Any discussion of this motion? All those in favor? The motion carries. Any more on this topic? No? Okay. Now we're on to councillor reports. They're written. Are there any questions on each other's reports, activities? No. Councillor DeAndretti.
I have a question. If regards, because I was reading the OCP, so I just have can I ask a question regarding water? It's just the previous topic. It just says one of the policies maps significant recharge areas according to the recommendation. So I'm just curious, have we mapped all the recharge areas at this point? How are we with the mapping?
Yes. You might recall there's one common recharge area per se above the 3 lobes. This particular lobe, being the Somes one, we know less about than we do about the other 2. So that's yeah.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So this would give us an opportunity, having the monitoring in the well would give us an opportunity to build out the mapping that we have. So we're looking at doing this too in the Elphinstone lobe of Aquifer 560 through the watershed agreement that we've entered into with the Sunshine Coast Regional District.
Okay, I think we did council reports. So we're at 8.1, which is I think this is straightforward. There's a letter requesting our support for a Sunshine Coast Regional District Fire Smart grant, basically. Yeah, Councillor Kroll.
I just wanted to go back to council reports for a moment.
Okay. Are there questions on?
No, I just wanted to add something that may have been omitted. We have some very talented people amongst our midst, aside from staff, who I've been totally impressed this evening with the work they were doing on our behalf. But our alternate student on council, Aaron Payne from last year, and our current student on council, Kale Reed, are performing at the Bachfest this weekend at St. Hilda's Church in Sechelt. And they're doing, both Aaron and Kale are doing cello solos. I managed to get tickets, so I'm really excited about going. But it's humbling to be in a room with such talented people.
Thanks for adding that. We're jumping around. Yeah. Okay. So I did. Yeah. we keep jumping. Well, we jumped back from council reports to the previous one before this. So yeah. But we did talk about. So we're on SCRD. This is basic. I mean, I think this is just do we support their Fire Smart grant? Yeah. So is there a motion? Oh, we've got. Our grant expert here.
I just through you, Mr. Mayor, I just want to make sure that we're all aware that this, the Fire Smart program benefits like from Langdale all the way to Egmont. This is not just SCRD. Yeah. Okay, sorry, thank you.
That's the SCRD's full, including the municipalities, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, the full region. Moved by Councillor Kroll, seconded by Councillor DeAndrade. Any discussion? All those in favor? The motion carries. And now we have a motion to close based on 92B of the Community Charter, which is consideration of information received and held in confidence relating to negotiations between the municipality and provincial government or federal government or both. Moved by Councillor DeAndrade, seconded by Councillor Kroll. All those in favor? Motion carries.